Okay, so picture this. It's, what, 8:30 p.m. on a Sunday.
Oh, I know the scene.
You know the scene. You're at the kitchen table. The house is finally quiet, and you've got your laptop open. To your left, there's that lukewarm cup of coffee you totally forgot about 3 hours ago.
Yep.
And in one browser tab, you have the state standards for, say, third-grade literacy. Dense, legalistic, kind of confusing.
Mm-hmm.
And in another tab, a roster.
Uh,
30 students, all reading at completely different levels. Some are learning English, some are bored, some are, really struggling.
then right in the middle of the screen.
The blinking cursor, the blank white page.
Hmm.
And you feel that weight in your chest. You know you have to build something great for tomorrow, but the sheer logistics of it, it just feels like climbing a mountain.
That is the Sunday Scaries. It is such a universal experience in education, and it really highlights the fundamental problem we're looking at today, which is the invisible workload.
The invisible workload, yeah.
People see the, 6 hours of instruction. They don't see the 4 hours of logistical scrambling, the planning, the formatting, the differentiating that makes all that instruction possible.
Exactly. It's all the heavy lifting you do before you even get to say good morning to a kid. And that is why I am so interested in the stack of research we are unpacking today.
Right.
Because we're not talking about some futuristic, sci-fi scenario where a robot takes over the classroom and you're sipping a margarita.
Not at all.
We're talking about something much more immediate. We are doing a deep dive into the concept of the AI agent.
Right. And specifically, we're looking at this through the lens of two very practical, very dense documents. First, AI agents. The Digital Teaching Assistants Handbook, which sort of gives us the philosophy.
That's what and the why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the Notebook LM Strategic Setup Guide, which is essentially the instruction manual for how you build these tools.
So the mission for this conversation is pretty simple. We want to figure out how educators can use these agents to handle that logistical grunt work so they can get back to the stuff that actually matters.
The human stuff.
The relationships, the judgment calls, the actual teaching.
And that distinction is just so vital. The source material is crystal clear on this. The goal isn't automation of the teacher. It's the augmentation of the teacher.
Augmentation.
It's about building a system so you're not constantly drowning in paperwork.
I really like that distinction, augmentation. But let's, play devil's advocate for a second.
Mm-hmm.
AI agent sounds a little buzzword heavy.
It does.
Most teachers I know have already played with ChatGPT or Gemini. They've asked it to write a poem or maybe a quiz. How is an agent any different from just opening up a chatbot and firing off a random question?
That is the core concept we really need to nail down. According to the handbook, it all comes down to memory, context, and role. When you open a standard chatbot, it's just a blank slate. It's a one-off thing. You ask for a lesson plan, it gives you a generic one, you close the tab, and poof, it forgets you ever existed.
It has no long-term memory.
Zero. An agent, as defined here, is a digital teaching assistant. It's a system designed to hold specific context, to follow a very strict set of instructions, and to do a specific job over and over again. Think of it less like a search engine and more like a very eager student teacher who's read the entire internet but needs you to tell them exactly how your classroom works.
So it's like hiring an assistant, but you have to train them first.
Yeah.
And that training part, that seems to be the catch. The setup guide talks a lot about something called an anchor.
This sounds technical. Is this coding?
No, not coding at all, but it is structured writing. The guide argues that if you want an agent that actually sounds like you and knows what you want, you can't just wing it. You need what's called a core concept doc.
Which is what, exactly? A Google Doc? It's a Google Doc, but a very specific kind of Google Doc. It acts as the anchor for the AI. In this document, you define what the agent is, what its job is, and this is crucial, you set the guardrails.
Guardrails.
You explicitly write down things like, you are a professional teaching assistant, you prioritize student privacy, you do not make up facts, and you acknowledge that I, the teacher, am the final editor.
I see. So you are essentially writing the employee handbook for your digital assistant before you let it start working.
That is the perfect analogy. If you don't give the AI the handbook, it's just guessing. It might hallucinate. It might... But if you upload that core concept doc into a tool like Notebook LM, the AI suddenly understands its role. It knows the rules of the road.
Okay, so we've written the handbook, we've established who is in charge. Now let's put this assistant to work. The sources outline 3 specific use cases where this can actually save a teacher's sanity. The first one gets right at that blank screen problem I mentioned, the planning coach.
This is often where decision fatigue just hits the hardest. You know the standard, you know the time slot you have, but building the actual architecture of the lesson, it takes so much mental energy. The
Hmm.
planning coach agent is designed to co-design that architecture with you.
Now, I want to get specific here because generic advice is just useless to a teacher at 8:30 at night. The handbook gave a really detailed example of a grade 3 main idea lesson.
Hmm.
Walk us through what the teacher actually put into the system.
So in this scenario, the teacher didn't just type, "write me a lesson," that's a bad prompt.
Right.
Instead, because they had the agent set up, they provided specific constraints they input. Grade 3, 45-minute block, standard, identifying main idea. But, and this is key, they also included a learner profile,
Which was?
mixed reading levels, multilingual classroom.
And what did the agent spit out? Because usually AI lesson plans are kind of fluffy. They say things like discuss the topic, which doesn't really help anyone.
Well, because this agent was grounded in the handbook's pedagogical strategies, it was much, much more granular. It suggested a specific warm-up to activate background knowledge, which is huge for multilingual learners.
Okay.
Then, and I love this part, it scripted a teacher think aloud.
I stopped when I read that in the source. Think alouds are incredibly effective, where you narrate your own thinking process for the kids, but writing a script for one is so tedious. I usually just wing it and then realize halfway through I'm just rambling.
Exactly. The agent wrote a draft script. I am looking at this paragraph, and I notice the first sentence says, it gave the teacher a concrete starting point.
Wow.
Then it suggested guided practice where partners highlight main ideas versus details, and finally, a good exit ticket.
So the teacher didn't write it from scratch, but I'm assuming they didn't just print it and run with it either.
No, and the guide is so emphatic about this. The teacher is the human in the loop. They looked at the draft, maybe tweaked the hook, changed one of the examples to match a book they read yesterday. But the point is, they curated the draft in 10 minutes instead of writing it from scratch in 60.
That's the shift. You become an editor rather than a writer. You're starting with a B-plus draft instead of that blank page.
Precisely. And that frees up mental energy for the next use case, which is, I mean, it's arguably the biggest time sink in education. Differentiation.
Oh, absolutely. The time crisis.
Hmm.
We all know we're supposed to differentiate. We know every kid needs something slightly different.
Hmm.
But doing that by hand for 30 kids, it just leads to burnout. The sources call this the differentiation engine.
I love that term, engine. It implies industrial strength. You know, the idea is that you have a complex text, say a middle school science article about ecosystems, and you need to make it accessible to everyone in the room.
So what's the workflow here?
Hmm.
You feed the source text to the agent.
And you ask for 3 specific outputs. Output 1, a simpler version for developing readers. The agent rewrites the text, lowers the reading level, but, and this is so important, it keeps the scientific concepts intact.
It doesn't dumb it down.
It doesn't dumb down the biology, it simplifies the sentence structure.
Right, because they still have to learn the standard. So what's output 2?
Output 2 is a higher complexity version. More technical vocabulary for your advanced readers who might be bored by the standard text.
And output 3?
Question sets. But not just generic questions. The source mentions creating tiered questions. So one set for basic comprehension with sentence frames like the producer in this food web is, and then another set with higher order thinking prompts like what would happen to the population of X if Y collapsed.
And the teacher's reaction in the source material was really telling. They said this turns differentiation from a workload nightmare into a design decision.
That is such a profound shift. You're still deciding how to differentiate. That's your expertise. But the manual labor of actually rewriting the text, all the keystrokes, that's the agent's job.
Okay, so we've planned a lesson, we've differentiated the materials, the students have done the work, now it's 4:00 p.m., the kids are gone, and you have a stack of 150 exit tickets on your desk. This brings us to the third use case, the feedback and reflection assistant.
Yeah, feedback is tricky. We know from research that it's one of the most powerful influences on learning. But meaningful feedback is incredibly hard to scale. You just can't write a paragraph of deep analysis for 150 students every single day.
So how does the agent help here without crossing ethical lines? Because I'm assuming, and I'm really hoping, we aren't just feeding student essays into a machine and asking for a grade.
Absolutely not. And this is where those guardrails from our setup guide are completely non-negotiable. The first rule is privacy. You never, ever put student names or any identifiable data into a public AI model.
So how do you use it practically?
You take the student responses, say 25 answers to what is the main idea, and you strip the names. You just have the text. You paste that anonymous data into the tool.
Okay, and what are you asking the agent to do with it?
You are asking it to be a pattern spotter. You ask, cluster these responses based on common misconceptions, or identify the 3 biggest gaps in understanding.
That is brilliant. So instead of marking 25 papers individually and maybe realizing at paper number 20 that everyone missed the same point, you get a snapshot of the class's brain immediately.
Exactly. In the example from the handbook, the agent noticed that a huge group of students confused main idea with topic. It then suggested a reteaching strategy for the next day.
Wow.
And it even generated specific next step statements.
Statements like what?
Things like, if you listed a detail instead of the main idea, try looking at the first sentence of the paragraph. The teacher can just project that right on the board.
So you're providing targeted feedback,
Right.
but you did it by analyzing the data in bulk.
It transforms the exit ticket from, a compliance task, something you just check off, into actual data you can use to change your instruction tomorrow.
Okay, I am sold on the why. I totally see the utility. But I want to push back a little on the how. We touched on the core concept doc earlier, but looking at the Notebook LM strategic setup guide, this isn't just a upload one file and go situation, is it?
Yeah.
It actually lists 5 different types of documents you need to upload to really build this system properly.
You're right to pause there. This is the meta strategy. This is what separates a casual user from, a power user. If you just dump random PDFs into Notebook LM, you get a messy brain.
Right.
The guide advocates for a focused set. You are essentially building a custom curated brain for your classroom.
Let's walk through these 5 documents, because if our listeners are going to try this, they need to know what to build. We already mentioned number 1, the core concept doc. That's the anchor, the job description.
Correct. That defines the 3 uses: planning, differentiation, feedback, and sets all the safety rules.
Number 2 is fascinating to me. A blog post text or a voice sample. Why on earth does the AI need my blog post?
Have you ever noticed that AI tends to sound a little corporate, a little sterile? I hope this email finds you well. Here is a robust solution.
It sounds like a robot trying to be a person.
Right. So document 2 is a sample of your writing, maybe a newsletter you sent to parents or a teaching philosophy statement. You upload this and you tell the agent, adopt this tone, be warm, be encouraging, be concise and professional.
So you're literally voice training it.
Yes, this prevents the output from feeling cold or alien to your students or your parents.
Okay, document 3, the prompt library. This feels a bit like a cheat sheet.
It is, and it's a massive time saver. You don't want to type out a 300-word prompt every single time you need a lesson plan. You create a document called AI Agent Prompts Classroom Library, and it contains your best, most tested prompts.
It's like a menu you can order from.
Exactly. You have Prompt 1, the 5E lesson plan. You have Prompt 2, the vocabulary tier list. When the agent has this file, you can just say, run Prompt 2 for the Civil War unit, and it knows exactly what structure you want. It's like having macros for your brain.
That makes a ton of sense. Now, document 4 confused me a little bit. Visual structure. I mean, AI is text-based. Why are we talking about visuals?
Because eventually you have to put this stuff on a slide or a handout, right?
Right.
And if you ask an AI to write slide content, what does it usually give you?
A gall of text. Just paragraphs and paragraphs of information.
Which is terrible for a slide. The visual structure doc teaches the AI how to format for design. It contains rules like slides must have a maximum of 4 bullets, or infographics should be structured as title, icon, concept, short description.
So when I ask it to draft a slide deck, it gives me text that is actually ready to be pasted right into PowerPoint or Canva.
Precisely. It respects the spatial constraints of the medium because you taught it to.
And finally, number 5, the brand and audience guide.
This just creates consistency. You define who you are, maybe you call yourself the grade 4 logic team, and who you serve. It ensures that if you generate a letter to parents, it doesn't use educational jargon like pedagogical scaffolding. That's just going to confuse them.
It keeps the agent on brand.
Exactly.
So I want to be realistic here. This sounds amazing, but it also sounds like work. To sit down and create these 5 documents, I mean, that's going to take an hour or 2 on a Sunday.
It will. It's an upfront investment, but think of it like building a template. You spend 2 hours building the engine so that for the rest of the year, your planning takes 15 minutes instead of an hour. The ROI, The return on that investment is just massive.
You're building a machine so you don't have to be the machine.
Exactly. And once you have that machine built in Notebook LM, the setup guide mentions you can do some really advanced stuff using the studio panel. We're not just talking about text anymore.
This is where it gets really cool. The studio panel allows you to generate audio overviews. Give me a use case. Why would a teacher need an audio file?
Okay, imagine you're flipping your classroom. You want the students to understand the core concept of photosynthesis before they even come to class. You can feed your source text to the agent and say, generate a 3-minute audio explanation of this for 12-year-olds. Use a fun, energetic tone.
And it just creates the conversation.
It creates a dialogue or a monologue explaining the concept. Or think about subplans.
Subplans are the worst. You usually have to write more to be away than to actually be there.
Right. So you could say, generate a script for the substitute teacher explaining exactly how to run this station rotation. You remove all the ambiguity. The agent uses your prompt library and your visual structure to create a perfectly formatted guide for the sub.
It really feels like we are moving from AI as a toy, look, wrote a limerick, to AI as a structured workflow.
That is the headline. We are moving into the utility phase. It's no longer about the novelty. It's about the systems.
But I want to pause here and ask the hard question. I want to play the skeptic for a minute. There is a fear, and I think it's a valid one, that if we hand all of this over to AI, do we lose something? Do we lose the craft? If I'm not sweating over the lesson plan, if I'm not struggling with the wording on the worksheet, am I really teaching?
It's a fair question, and it's one we absolutely should be asking, but I would counter with this. What is the core craft of teaching? Is the craft of teaching formatting a worksheet? Is the craft of teaching aligning bullet points on a slide?
No.
Or is the craft of teaching understanding the human being in front of you and figuring out how to unlock their potential?
It's the relationships. It's that moment you see the light bulb go on.
Exactly. The argument these sources make, and the argument I would make, is that by handing over the logistics, the sorting, the drafting, the leveling, you're actually buying back time for the craft.
So if you save 5 hours a week on planning.
Yeah. That is 5 hours you can spend giving one-on-one verbal feedback. 5 hours you can spend calling parents with good news. 5 hours you can spend actually listening to a student who's having a bad day instead of rushing them because you have to go photocopy a worksheet before the bell rings.
That's the trade-off. We aren't doing less work. We are shifting the nature of the work.
We're shifting from administrative load to relational load. And I think most teachers would take that trade in a heartbeat.
It's such a fascinating place to land. The idea that this incredibly high-tech tool might actually allow us to be more human in the classroom.
That is the hope. But it requires intention. It requires building the system, setting the guardrails we talked about, and strictly always keeping the human in the loop. The agent is the assistant. You are the teacher.
Well, for everyone listening, whether you're in the classroom, the front office, or just interested in how learning is changing, I hope this gives you permission to try it. Build the documents, create the anchor, see if you can buy back some of that Sunday night sanity.
It's definitely worth the experiment.
Thank you so much for walking us through this stack. This has been a real deep dive.
My pleasure.
And to our listener, thanks for being here. Let us know if you try the differentiation engine. We'd love to hear how it goes. We'll catch you in the next deep dive.